What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that I've been, kind of eagerly anticipating once I actually looked up more about the band. We're going to go over the debut full-length from Earthburner, Permanent Dawn. This also comes out on the 8th of November on M Theory Audio. This band formed in Chicago in 2001. Now, as I said, this is their debut album. They did have one EP before this, and this was a project originally formed by Jeremy Wagner and Mike Mizak. I'm sorry if I'm screwing up your name. Both of Broken Hope. They had a different singer beforehand, and I guess the band kind of went on hiatus for a while. But they have resurfaced with some new members, and at least one name that I was very familiar with, Devin Swank of Sanguisugabogg, and bassist Tyler Affinito of the band Glory Hole Guillotine. Not really a well-known band, but I had to say that band name because it's awesome. And yeah, this is some flat-out gnarly death grind.
I'd actually never heard of this band, or maybe I've heard them and just didn't realize who they were. But I'm a fan of Broken Hope and equally a fan of Sanguisugabogg, so I mean, with that batch of bands alone, you kind of know what you're getting into here.
But honestly, like reading over the liner notes on this album, I specifically was reading the thanks, which Devin's thanks at the end were pretty awesome. He thanked readily available weed and gas station boner pills.
I mean,
you never know when you're going to need either. But Jeremy's was way more specific about the bands that I would say influenced this album. And he specifically cited Terrorizer, Carcass, or at least like Bill Steer, and Napalm Death, which that goes a little bit deeper because as a honorary member, as they put him in here, we have Mitch Harris doing backup screams on here. And this is just flat out sick death grind. Kind of brutal death grind.
Yeah. In fact, I would call this, at least me personally, closer to brutal death metal than I would grind. There are some grindy elements in here for sure. There are some more punky moments found in the title track and Perception for Profit and the last track, Positive Outlook, which I think is the more melodic of those tracks. But for the most part, this is chocked full of just nasty, chunkified, brutal breakdowns.
Blast beats, D beats, snarling riffs. I would say that this is kind of like Jeremy Wagner's love letter to like all of his more like grind-oriented influences, including like crust punk and hardcore, and of course like a fair amount of death metal too. But it's all kind of like across the board and kind of mixed up. Like the breakdowns aren't always more like death metal oriented. Sometimes you get some hardcore ones, but I mean the death metal oriented ones are absolutely savage, especially on Cadaveric Coprophagia, which is that's eating corpse shit. That's fun. Might be past the born-on date.
Oh my god.
I know, it's terrible. Same thing with Hunger Pains and the song Slaves to the Screen.
Slaves to the Screen and Hunger Pains, those two breakdowns most specifically are probably the most face-smashing moments on this record.
And vocally, for the most part, with Devin's low guttural vocals, it kind of gives this a little bit more of a death metal leaning sound, like even when you get into sections with like the down-picked riffs and blasts and D-beats. His delivery overall on here is definitely, just more of a straight up just death metal roar. Like if you've been listening to the Bog for long enough, you know what he sounds like. He's just got some massive gutturals.
Yep.
But to his credit, I gotta say, like he does spice it up a little bit. There are moments on here where he's a little bit more high register in his growls. Slaves to the Screen in particular, like he kind of, takes a more like hardcore approach. Like it's not the deep gutturals, it's more of like a hardcore yell. And definitely on Positive Outlook, which definitely has like more punk elements to it. Like it's probably the most punky song on here. And he does like kind of a interesting like give and take and then like layering with Mitch on there. Mitch kind of takes the lead at first and his absolutely snarled, ravaged, just nuts screams. I fucking love Mitch. It leads in the song just like super aggressively, but not like, again, in a death metal sense. And then you hear Devin kind of behind him doing more like just, I don't know, it's almost clean-ish. Like they're kind of more bellows.
Yeah, it almost sounds like they're being sung, but I don't think they are.
I mean,
it's got a little bit of melody to it. Like I couldn't kind of shake away from that, but at the same time, they're not singing. Maybe they're just doing like tonal shifts as they say these words or something. I'm not 100%.
It's kind of like the closest thing you get to like gang vocals on here, especially since they have two distinct voices. You do get like some like heavier layering, especially in the opening track, Necrodisiac. That's a fun title.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not why Devin's getting gas station boner pills. But no, it comes in like heavier, more deep roars, and then I believe on this track Ross Dolan guests as well. And in terms of like having some extra deep roars in there, you got one hell of a guy.
As far as actually like performance-wise, the drum performance on here is actually pretty solid. A lot of Mike Smith blast beats, like a lot, just that everything all at once. And while the riffs are just like in your face, just a lot of like punch you in the face type of moments, very chunky and chuggy all the time. Like the drums do a good job of at least switching up the dynamic of these riffs, because while the riffs don't change much, the drums do what they're supposed to do and change the pattern and the style a little bit. So you got a bunch of blasts into like double time moments, into these, again, bone crunching halftime breakdowns that are just fucking gross.
And the variety of blasts in here are actually pretty cool. Like you get those like flat out Mike Smith blasts, you get like some more like just feverish, crazy, grindy blasts. You also get like those like kind of like classic thrashy galloped ones, like, you know, kind of like what you would hear on like, you know, earlier Sepultura. And they pack a lot of riffs into like pretty short songs. Like I want to say the longest song on here still is under the 3-minute mark. And you have some short bangers like Uncreation and Like Dogs, which are under the minute mark. But within those songs, they still pack a fair amount of dynamics, some, you know, fun riff changes, and again, constant energy. And they're great about building into these moments. The transitions on here are awesome. The end of Hunger Pains in particular, how they build into that breakdown, like it goes, you know, kind of into like just like a standard 4/4 time groove. Like it's heavy, it's chuggy, it's mean as hell. Then they halftime that thing and it keeps getting slower and meaner. I swear, they play this thing live. Every meathead in the pit is just going to be popping wood at the same time. Like, oh, dude.
Right. They do a good job about switching up the songs or the pacing of the album, because sometimes you get stuff that's just straightforward old school death metal, and then you get stuff that's grindy, and then you get stuff that's straight brutal death metal, and then you get some punk thrown in. And albeit these songs are pretty short, they do a good job of mixing things up so you're not getting too much of the same thing all at once.
Yeah, there wasn't a moment on here that I was bored, because like it was good about changing up the dynamic a little bit. I like the straightforward like Discharge worship stuff, but hearing that kind of segue into like grindy blast beats and then a flat out just savage death metal breakdown, yeah, that's kind of like a lot of the stuff I love, all in these short, compact, violent, fun songs. And again, like the transitions in particular, I think are a lot of fun. Like you get like good isolated drum and bass sections, and bass on here is absolutely snarly. And, you know, when it came down to like, you know, Jeremy's words about like, you know, specific influences, I totally hear World Downfall on here. I also hear Napalm Death's Utopia Banished. 2 of my favorite albums right there. So yeah, it's doing a great job of reminding me of stuff that I already love. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that this is like a tribute of either one of those albums. There's enough stuff mixed in here where this kind of stands on its own. You're just able to sort of like pick apart all the stuff that is like, yeah, no, I kind of know where that comes from. And I can't understate Mitch's presence on here. I figured he would be only on here for like a couple of tracks, but as an honorary member, he's on pretty much the entire album, and he plays off of Devin really well. They do like some fun give and takes. The layering is great, and again, it's almost like kind of like a Carcass-ish vocal dynamic,
kind of.
where they're vastly different, but it's kind of got, again, that like punky, hardcore aggression to it. And yeah, his presence on here is absolutely awesome. Like it gives the, you know, songs like a little bit extra snarly, punky bite.
I did have one takeaway here, and it was the guitar tone. The guitars are kind of weird. They lend themselves a lot to like a snarly grindcore tone. They're a little bit thin, but they act more as like a noise machine. Don't get me wrong, on the same token, they're crunchy and they're chunky, but they're, again, being really raw and noisy. It's just kind of weird. And since the vocals are pretty out front, the guitar tends to get buried a little bit, which sucks because they're really awesome riffs. There's a ton of really awesome riffs, but the mix just isn't even because the drums are out front and very punchy. Again, that bass snarls, but the guitar gets buried a little bit, and I was like, man.
Yeah, I kind of ran into that in like the tone of the guitars versus the tone of everything else. The guitars have a more old school, snarly feel. Like, you know, again, very comparable to World Downfall and Utopia Banished. Like they're kind of dirty sounding, but in comparison to the rest of the album, they do sound thin because the drums have a very modern production. Like they're way more crisp sounding, and the vocals being out front and pretty clear. Yeah, sometimes you can kind of lose the guitars on here, which sucks because they're playing nothing but badass riffs on here. No time for solos or anything extra, but just absolutely savage, punishing riffs. And I don't know, like, just again, that mix, it just feels odd. Like, I feel like it's got, like, you know, 1 foot in, like, you know, the late 80s and early 90s, and then, well, all the other feet, because I feel like there's a lot of feet. There's more members in the band. They're all more in, like, kind of like a more modern sense. That being said, it doesn't really hurt the album that much. Like, in terms of flat-out enjoyability, like, you know, it's got a throwback vibe, but it still sounds fresh and fun. And I enjoyed this entire blitz of a listen. It's short, sweet, violent, explosive as hell, and I'm gonna go ahead and give this 4 stars. Like, this kind of does everything that I like in extreme metal for the most part. You know, there's not any black metal moments, but I'm pretty sure they could have squeezed it in there if they wanted to. But no, it stays more on death grind, grindcore, punk, hardcore. It's just a vicious, mean album, but it also sounds fun. It sounds like a love letter to music that these guys loved, and they just wanted to just kind of get together and just rock out some vicious tunes, and it works. When those breakdowns hit, they're absolutely savage. The blast beats are great, just killer riffs. If you are a big fan of like Terrorizer, Napalm Death, I would even say like Touches of Nausea, Suffocation, Cannibal Corpse, yeah, just check this out. This is a nasty album.
I agree. It's 4 stars for me as well. This record is fairly savage for being as short as it is. Again, the riff play between being heavier than shit and faster and grindy, and the culmination of all these things is done really well. And they do a really good job to mesh all these styles without overcrowding songs. Outside of the fact that I didn't really like the guitar mix, much like we said, it doesn't really harm anything. The songs are definitely fun. I think you can call this like a little miniature supergroup that got together and just wanted to play some heavy music together. You can definitely tell they're having a lot of fun. Really, it's found in the vocals too. Again, that low growl that Devin has and that little higher scream register that Mitch has, just the two of them play very well together, and it makes it pretty entertaining. But again, if you're into bands like Napalm Death, Suffocation for sure, Cannibal Corpse for sure, maybe a little bit of Obituary, and probably just a ton of other really just kind of heavy fun bands, I'd recommend checking this out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also now have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and we are going to eventually start doing some, members-only live streams. That is our perk we're doing. We also offer stupid emojis. I don't know if that's a big sell, but they're definitely stupid. This is our new way to support the channel if you would like. We're trying to get away from Patreon, and again, StreamYard raising the prices. Granted, the quality's going up, yada, yada, yada. But if you would like to help us out, there's a join button down below, and we also still have our store with t-shirts and hats and such. So either way, we would appreciate it. And on to you, John.
As always, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal. You guys already know the deal. Album reviews, discography rankings. This members-only stream we're finally getting to because we're slowing down on album releases. We are hitting the end of the year, and we want to make sure for the people that have actually joined us as members that we, follow through and do more of what we're supposed to do, unlike Patreon, which we just kind of failed. I'm sorry about that. Regardless, we're thankful that you're here. We appreciate all of our subscribers, our family, our friends, everybody that helps make this into something far larger than we ever thought it would be. We're on the precipice of hitting 20,000 subscribers, you guys. That's absolutely insane. I'm beside myself. I can't believe we're there, but thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Yeah, and I'm going to put something together for a 20,000 subscriber giveaway. I've got some stuff I can definitely throw in there, and I don't know, I might throw in some extra stuff that I'm thinking about. But yeah, that is all due to you guys. We appreciate every bit of support you guys have given us. It's amazing doing this. Yep. And yeah, I couldn't be more thankful. So I'm going to throw you one more thanks just to show you that.
Thank you.
And we will catch you later.